everyone. Thanks for joining me for Alexis University. Today we're going to be talking about learning who to depend on, who to trust, and what are some things that you need to think about when you're trying to figure out who these people may be in your life. So one thing for me that became super hard is when I was growing up, I was super dependent on my family and my parents. And I noticed that when I got to college because they weren't just downstairs and I could say, hey, uncle, or hey, mom, I need to talk to you about something really just real quick. And, we kind of work through it together. Now I have to call them and hopefully they answer. They might be at work. They might be having class, or even they might be with their own children, or whatever the case may be. They weren't just that close to me, and that I didn't have access to them as much as I did when I was, at home before I went to college. So I think one thing to think about when you get to college is, who are you going to depend on the most? So yes, I still think you should be able to depend on your family, parents, friends from home, all that. I think that those people are still, count on them to depend on them. But just make sure that when you need something that's quick, easy, right away, who else are you going to call? Whether it be you stop and think to yourself, okay, I've had a similar situation like this before. My mom would say this, or I've had a situation like this before. My uncle would say this, or my grandparents would say this. Start thinking about those things. Start to think about different scenarios that you can play out in your head, because you have this big exam coming up, or you have this big event coming up, and you need to think about, like, what am I going to wear? Something as simple as that. They told you an attire, but you're not really sure what that means for you in that moment. You think you have something that you want to wear, but you don't really think that that might be appropriate for this event. Something as simple as that. Just start thinking about, okay, maybe even think about talking to those people ahead of time, so that it's not the day of and you're scrambling to figure out what you want to do, or just like what you think you can do differently. Just, start thinking about those things ahead of time. One thing I think will help you stop being codependent of your parents or your family, or whoever that case may be, is start depending on yourself a lot more. Trust your gut, trust your instincts, and say, okay, I don't need them to make this decision. I don't need them to help me with every single thing that I do. Start making decisions for yourself. I know a lot of times it's just so much easier to call somebody else and say, hey, what do you think about this? I just want to run this by you real quick. And that's totally fine. But just think about, if they don't answer, what's going to be your plan B, especially if you have to make a decision relatively quickly. Or just even start thinking about ways like, hey, okay, I'm going to make this decision by myself, and then I'm going to call somebody and say, hey, this is what I did. What do you think about how I handled this situation? What would you have done differently? That way it's more of a learning experience instead of it being somebody else always making that decision for you. One day you're going to call them and they're not going to be able to answer right away, whether they be in a meeting, whether they be the time difference, so they're sleeping right now, or they're getting ready for work. You just never know. So just try to make some of those decisions by yourself as you continue to figure out, like, okay, what do I need to do? If I make this decision, is it going to hurt anybody? If the answer is no, make the decision by yourself. Is it going to cause me any trouble? No, make the decision by yourself. Just start thinking of things that you can do truly by yourself, so that you're not always thinking about, man, what do I need to do? Or who can I call real quick? And not have a list of people that you're calling each and every time you feel like you're going through something, or you need to get a question answered. One thing I can say is that you can find an expert in that subject, like an advisor or someone who has been in your shoes before, and just say, hey, I want to take these two classes together. What do you think? And that advisor or that person who's already done that will say, like, yeah, that's not a good idea, because when I took these two classes together, one class I struggled with because I was so focused on the other class. Or they'll say, oh, that's a great idea, because then you can focus on a different class. Something like that. They'll always have different advice for you. Make sure that you also find yourself being dependable as well, because you don't want to be that person that's always calling and asking for something, but you're not able to help people on the other end as well. So just find ways that you can be dependable. And even if people are thinking about, like, okay, so you have a mentee and they're in the same major as you. So just say, hey, I noticed that, the next semester is coming up. What are some of the things that you're concerned about? Or what are some of the things that I can help you do to make sure that your transition from this semester to the next semester is going to be great? So just find ways to also, like I said, be dependable, give back to that next group of people. So if you have any questions about who I think you should depend on, or why I think you should learn to depend on yourself, please feel free to email me at info@alexisuniversity.com, and I'll be sure to answer all those emails. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all soon.